2 years had passed since I signed those divorce papers and left everything behind. Selena, the lies, the apartment we fought over, even the silver sedan I used to drive. I started over in a quiet neighborhood, a modest one-story house with an overgrown lawn and a coffee maker that always needed fixing. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. And peace, after what I'd been through, was gold. The day started like any other. I'd just come back from the gym, sweat still clinging to my shirt, when the knock came. Not the kind of knock you get from neighbors asking to borrow sugar. No, this was sharp, deliberate, and loud enough to make my heart thud in my chest. I looked through the peephole and blinked. Red and blue lights flashed behind two uniformed officers on my porch. My mind immediately sprinted through every possible explanation: parking tickets, identity theft, wrong house. I opened the door slowly, cautious. "Can I help you?" The taller officer stepped forward. "Are you Leo Carter?" "Yes." He exchanged a look with his partner before continuing. "Sir, we have a situation. A child was found abandoned in a vehicle registered in your name. We need you to come with us." I froze. "A child? No, that's not possible. I don't have a child." His tone didn't change. "Sir, I'm afraid we need you to come down to the station. You're currently listed as the legal owner of the vehicle. We're placing you under arrest until we can sort things out." The words hit me like a slap. Wait. What? This is some kind of mistake. I haven't owned that car in 2 years. My ex-wife took it in the divorce, checked the records. But it didn't matter. They read me my rights, cuffed me right there on my porch in broad daylight, and led me to the back of the cruiser. Neighbors peeked through curtains. One woman across the street paused mid-dog walk. I stared down at my shoes and tried not to scream. At the station, I sat in an interview room under flickering fluorescent lights, my wrist sore from the cuffs. An officer placed a manila folder on the table and slid it toward me. The child was found in a silver 2008 sedan. Still registered in your name. License plate traced back to this address. I shook my head, trying to focus. That car. Selena took it. I haven't driven it since the divorce. She was supposed to re-register it. I assumed she did. Why would she leave a child in there? The officer leaned back. That's what we'd like to know. I ran a hand down my face. Where's the child now? Taken to the ER. Mild dehydration, some bruising, scared out of his mind, but stable. They found a name tag in his backpack. Said his name is Jaden. The name meant nothing to me at the time. I was too busy cycling through panic, shame, confusion. Every corner of my life, I'd rebuilt carefully, brick by emotional brick, and now this. A child. My name. An arrest. After hours of questioning and verifying my story, they finally let me go, but not without a warning. "You're not off the hook," one officer said. "Until we know more, you're still involved. That car's in your name, and the child may be connected to you." I walked out into the early evening, air thick with heat and tension. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a dozen missed calls from unknown numbers, a voicemail from Selena's mother. I ignored them all. I drove to the hospital, my stomach in knots, the name Jaden echoing in my mind like a song I didn't recognize but couldn't shake. The pediatric ward smelled like antiseptic and sadness. A nurse led me down a hallway lined with cartoon murals. I wasn't sure what I expected, but when I stepped into the room, I stopped cold. There he was. A boy, maybe 4 or 5, small for his age. Curly hair, tear-streaked cheeks, oversized t-shirt. He sat up in the hospital bed, clutching a juice box, his eyes locked on me the moment I entered. And I don't know how else to say it, he looked like me. Like I was looking back at a version of myself that had shrunk with time. The nurse leaned in and whispered, "He doesn't talk much. Keeps asking for someone named Selena." But when we told him your name, he looked comforted. I took a step forward. My breath caught. "Hey, buddy," I said gently, unsure why I even said it that way. "My name's Leo." His eyes didn't move from mine. He didn't speak, just blinked. I swallowed hard. "I'm gonna find out what's going on, okay? I promise." In that sterile hospital room, with the machines beeping and the scent of hand sanitizer curling through the air, everything I thought I knew about my life collapsed. Jaden was real. He was here. And if he was who I was starting to fear he might be, then nothing about my past with Selena was over. The hospital hallway was too quiet. That kind of quiet that doesn't come with peace but with pressure. I stood outside the pediatric room, hands clenched, replaying the officer's words in my head like a broken loop. The boy was found crying in the back seat of an old silver sedan. Registered to you. That car had been mine once. Technically still was, I guess. but it hadn't seen my driveway in years. After Selena and I divorced, she got the sedan, and I never looked back. She promised she'd handle the transfer. Apparently, promises didn't mean much to her anymore. The nurse walked out of the room and gave me a look, a mix of professional calm and personal concern. He's stable. Shaken, a bit dehydrated. No broken bones. He's been checked top to bottom. Physically, he'll be okay. Then she leaned in a little and lowered her voice. Emotionally, that's different. He hasn't said much, but he asks for his mom every hour. Then he goes quiet again. Selena? I asked. The nurse nodded. That's the name he says. You know her? I didn't answer right away. What could I say? That she was my ex-wife? That we hadn't spoken in over 2 years? That she'd vanished with some guy she claimed was everything I wasn't? I just nodded slowly and whispered, yeah. I know her. She gave me a clipboard with some forms to sign, then gently gestured for me to enter the room. I stepped in slowly, my breath hitching as I laid eyes on the boy again. He was sitting upright now, knees pulled to his chest, fingers fiddling with a thread on the hospital blanket. His face was pale, cheeks blotched from crying. But what stopped me in my tracks was his eyes, deep brown, wide, and haunted. Familiar. He looked up at me, and for a second, the room disappeared. It was like looking into a photograph I hadn't taken, but somehow remembered. The curve of his nose, the shape of his jaw. There was a resemblance that chilled me, and confused me, and terrified me all at once. I sat in the plastic chair next to his bed. My voice came out more fragile than I intended. Hi. He blinked at me. No response. My name's Leo. Nothing. But he didn't look away. I heard your name is Jaden. His tiny head gave the faintest nod. It was barely perceptible, but it was there. A spark. A recognition. That's a strong name, I added. You like it? Another pause. Then a whisper. My mom picked it. Of course she did. That woman could script a life and walk away from it like a movie premiere she was too good to attend. My mouth went dry. Do you know where your mom is now? He shook his head. That one hit different. I looked over at the nightstand, where a small stuffed lion had been placed beside a juice box and crackers. Someone had tried to comfort him. It wasn't enough. They said you were in a car, I continued. Do you remember that? His face twisted. He didn't speak. His little hands tightened on the blanket. I leaned in just slightly. It's okay. You don't have to talk about it. I'm just trying to understand what happened. For a long time, he said nothing. Then, just when I started to think I should stop asking, he whispered. I was hot. I cried. Nobody came. I swallowed hard, heart punching the inside of my ribs. I'm sorry that happened, Jaden. You didn't deserve that. No one does. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and for a split second, his eyes searched mine, like they were trying to remember something they'd never been told. Something buried deep in blood. Do you know my mom? He asked again, his voice softer now, trembling. I nodded slowly. Yeah. A long time ago, we were close. Are you my daddy? The words hit harder than I expected. I hadn't prepared for them. I didn't even know how to process them. My throat tightened. I couldn't lie, but I couldn't confirm what I didn't know. So I told him the truth. I don't know yet, Jaden, but I'm going to find out. He looked down, like he didn't know whether to be relieved or scared. Maybe both. I reached out, gently, and placed my hand on the edge of his blanket. Not a touch, just proximity. He didn't pull away. I'm going to be here for you, okay? I said, until we figure all of this out. You're not alone anymore. He didn't reply. But when the nurse came in to check on him, Jaden did something small, something that I wouldn't forget. He reached out and tugged lightly on my sleeve. Like he wanted me to stay. Like, for the first time in a while, someone staying meant something. I stayed. For the rest of that night, I stayed. In a plastic chair with an aching back, unanswered questions, and a kid who might be mine. My old life was behind me. But something bigger, something heavier, was just beginning. And his name was Jaden. Jaden. The name hit me like a kick to the chest the moment the nurse said it. I had to sit down. My legs gave out on me, right there in the hallway outside the pediatric room. The name wasn't just familiar, it was sacred. Not something you hear on the street and forget 5 minutes later. It was the name Selena, and I used to whisper late at night when we were still pretending our future was real. When we still made lists of baby names, clinging to each syllable like it was a promise. Jaden had been our top choice. Back when we talked about kids as if they were inevitable, not optional. We even joked once about him inheriting my crooked smile and her thick black hair. That was before everything soured. Before lies piled up in quiet corners of our home. Before the pregnancy that never came, or so I thought. Now here I was, in a hospital hallway with that name slicing through my past like a jagged blade. I stood up and walked back into the room. Jaden was coloring quietly on a piece of printer paper the nurse had given him. The lion plush sat in his lap like a guardian. I moved closer, slower this time, careful not to spook him. He looked up at me. No words. Just those eyes again. You feeling a little better? I asked, gently. A nod. I pulled the chair closer to the bed and lowered myself into it, elbows on my knees, heart pounding. Can I ask you something? He paused, then gave another slow nod. Do you know your mom's full name? He bit his bottom lip. Selena Carter. Carter. She never changed her last name after the divorce. That detail shouldn't have meant anything, but it did. I wasn't sure if I was shaking from shock or rage or fear, but I tried to steady myself. Do you know your last name? Jaden Carter, he answered without hesitation. I had to look away, stare at the wall. Something. My chest ached in places I didn't know still worked. You're doing great, buddy, I managed to say. Thanks for telling me that. He smiled, just barely. And that smile, damn it, it was mine. Not just metaphorically. I'd seen that exact smirk in the mirror after pulling off a good joke. I felt the blood drain from my face. All I could think was, how? How could Selena have hidden this from me? I stepped out into the hallway, heart slamming. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts I hadn't touched in years until I found her mother's number. I hesitated, then hit call. It rang once, twice. Then she picked up. Leo. The voice was instantly familiar, tired, older now, but definitely hers. I need answers, I said flatly. There's a boy here. His name is Jaden. Looks just like me. He says Selena is his mother. And guess what? The car he was found in? The one she left him in? It's still registered to me. Her silence spoke volumes. I need to know the truth, I continued, jaw tight. Is he mine? Her breath hitched on the other end. Leo, I didn't know she hadn't told you. I thought you knew. Knew what? That she had a son. With me. There was a pause so long I thought she'd hung up. Then came the quiet answer. Yes. The hallway wobbled around me. I braced my hand on the wall. Selena didn't want you to know, she whispered. She said it would complicate things. Said you were too focused on your job, your career, that you weren't ready. She was scared you'd leave her. She left me, I snapped. She cheated. She walked away. She gutted my life and left me with nothing but a couch and a storage bill. And you're telling me she also took my son? Her voice cracked. She didn't handle it well. She kept thinking she'd tell you one day. But then she met that man, the one she left with. And when that fell apart, she couldn't cope. She wasn't in her right mind. Leo, that doesn't explain leaving a child, her child, in a locked car in the middle of summer. I know, she said, tears audible now. I know. I told her it was unforgivable. But she was desperate. She said she was going to leave him with you. Said she parked near your address. She parked 4 blocks away. No note. No call. Just left him. I'm sorry, Leo. I really am. I hung up. I didn't trust myself to keep talking. When I stepped back into the hospital room, Jaden was asleep. His head rested against the lion plush. The nurse was dimming the lights. He okay? I asked. She nodded. He'll need a lot of support. But he's resilient. And he seems to like you. I stared at him for a long time. My son. I didn't have the test results yet, but I knew. My gut knew. My bones knew. And I hated that I'd been robbed of those 4 years. His first words. His first steps. His first everything. I leaned closer, whispering into the quiet. I should have known about you, kid. I'm sorry I didn't. But I'm here now. And I won't leave. Ever. Jaden stirred, but didn't wake. I sat down again and kept watch, not as a stranger anymore, but as a man on the edge of fatherhood. It was just past midnight when my phone rang. I'd been sitting in the dark hospital room for hours, watching Jaden sleep. The steady beep of machines blended with the hum of the air conditioning, but that call sliced through the stillness like a scalpel. I didn't recognize the number, but something in my gut told me to answer. My voice was low, cautious. Hello? Leo. The voice on the other end was frantic, breaking apart between sobs. It took me a second to place it. Selena's mother, Marissa. I stood, stepping into the hallway, lowering my voice. Marissa. Oh, God, Leo. I just found out. I didn't know she's Selena. She said she was leaving Jaden with you. She said you'd understand. She left him in a car, Marissa. A car. In the heat. Alone. My words came out sharper than I meant, but the rage had been building. She didn't tell me anything. The only reason I found out is because the car's still registered in my name, and the police arrested me. I know. I'm so sorry, she cried. Selena didn't tell anyone where she was going. I thought she was with her boyfriend, but he left her, took all their money and ran. She had no job, no home. She's been living out of motels. She's not okay. I closed my eyes. Not okay is one thing. Abandoning a child is another. She panicked. Leo, Marissa whispered. She said she left Jaden at your house. No, she didn't. She left him in the back of a car with no note. That boy sat there, scared and sweating, crying until someone found him. That's not panic. That's negligence. Silence. Is he? Her voice trembled. Is he okay? He will be. But he's not asking for her. Not once. I could hear her breathing, shaky and uneven. She didn't know what else to do. She said she couldn't take care of him anymore, that she was ruining his life. She thought if she left him with you, he'd be better off. And she never thought to ask me? To call me? To give me a damn chance? I was pacing now, my heart a war drum. She stole 4 years of my son's life from me. She made that decision on her own. I know, Marissa murmured. But please, Leo, whatever happens, please don't punish Jaden for her choices. My throat tightened. I wouldn't. I couldn't. I hung up without another word. There was nothing more to say. I turned and stared through the small hospital window into Jaden's room. He was curled beneath the blanket, one hand still holding onto that plush lion, his mouth parted just slightly in sleep. My chest ached. Not just from the betrayal, not just from the loss, but from the sheer weight of what had been thrust into my life. I walked back in and sat beside him again. And for the first time, I let myself feel it all. The disbelief, the fury, the grief, the wonder. My mind kept circling back to the same brutal question. How could she? Selena used to be the kind of woman who cried over sick animals on the side of the road. She used to hum lullabies to plants to help them grow. And yet she had left her own child in a hot car like forgotten luggage. Jaden stirred, blinking groggily. His voice was barely a whisper. Where's Mommy? The question hit me hard. I hesitated, then leaned in close. She's not here right now, buddy. Is she coming back? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to offer comfort wrapped in easy lies. But I couldn't do that to him. He'd already had too much taken from him. I don't know, I said gently. But I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. He stared at me for a moment, his lip trembling, then crawled into my lap like it was something he'd done 100 times before. He fit there perfectly, like he belonged. I wrapped my arms around him, slowly, afraid I'd break the moment. He buried his face in my chest and let out a soft sigh. Later that night, I stayed with him until dawn. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just held him and thought about all the things I never got to see, his first steps, his first word, the way he must have cried when he realized no one was coming back for him. But I was here now. The next morning, I called a lawyer. I didn't want revenge. I didn't even want to speak to Selena. I wanted protection for Jaden and for myself. I wanted to make sure no one could take him from me again. And I wanted the truth. Because if I was going to fight for this boy, I needed to know without a shred of doubt that he was mine. Even though deep down, I already knew. The moment I stepped into the law office, it smelled like leather and stress. I hadn't even sat down before the receptionist handed me a clipboard full of forms. I scribbled my name across the top, my mind running on autopilot while everything else inside me churned. I wasn't just some guy walking in with a legal question. I was a man chasing down the truth about a child who might be his. The boy was asleep in the hospital, clutching a stuffed lion like it was armor, and I was here trying to figure out how to protect him from the chaos he'd been born into. The lawyer was calm, buttoned up, mid-40s with steel-gray hair, and the kind of voice that didn't rise unless it had to. His name was Victor Greer. He listened without interrupting, except to scribble notes or raise an eyebrow. I told him everything, how I hadn't known about Jaden, how the police had shown up, how Selena left him in a car that still had my name on it. And I told him about the resemblance. The name. The overwhelming feeling in my gut that I didn't just know this boy. I belonged to him. Victor nodded slowly. You need 2 things. First, a DNA test. Without that, no court's going to grant you custody or protection. Second, once the test confirms paternity, we file for emergency custody. With what Selena did, you might even get full rights. She hasn't even shown up, I muttered. She left him and vanished. He looked me in the eye. Which means the longer she's gone, the more leverage you have. But don't wait. Get the test. Time matters in these cases. I left the office with a folder of paperwork, a referral to a testing clinic, and a sense of direction. I didn't know if I was angry, hopeful, or just tired, but I knew what I had to do. At the hospital, Jaden was coloring again. The nurse had given him a fresh pack of crayons and some drawing paper. He looked up when I walked in, his face lighting up like I was someone who always came back. That alone nearly leveled me. "Hey, bud," I said, setting down a small bag of food. "Got you some nuggets." His eyes widened. "With the red sauce?" "Ketchup, of course." He scrambled toward the tray, but before he dug in, he looked at me and asked, "Do I get to stay with you now?" That question cracked something in me. He asked it so simply, so earnestly, like he wasn't even sure if he was allowed to hope. I sat beside him and gave the only answer I could. "I don't know for sure yet, but I'm going to try. Really hard." He nodded, like that was enough. Like trying meant something to him. Later that afternoon, I took Jaden for the DNA test. It was quick, a cheek swab, some brief paperwork, a waiting room with too bright lighting and silence broken only by cartoons playing on a mounted television. Jaden sat on my lap the whole time, his fingers curled in the fabric of my sleeve. When it was over, the nurse smiled kindly and said, "You'll get your results in 3 days." 3 days. 72 hours. A lifetime. I didn't leave Jaden's side during that stretch. I brought him clean clothes, found him a Spider-Man toothbrush, and made sure the hospital food tray had chocolate pudding with every meal. I read him stories at night and learned he liked books about animals, especially elephants. He flinched at loud noises, didn't like the dark, and always hesitated before asking for anything, like he'd been taught that needs were burdens. And every time I left the room, even just to grab water or talk to a nurse, he'd look at me like he wasn't sure I'd come back. On the 3rd day, my phone buzzed. Victor's voice was steady, clinical. "Leo, we have the results. You're the biological father." Everything stopped. The air thinned. I pressed a hand to my chest like it could keep my heart from breaking apart or flying out. "Are you sure?" 100% match. "There's no doubt." I hung up and stood in that hallway for a long time before walking into Jaden's room. He was sitting cross-legged on the bed, flipping through a picture book, his lips silently mouthing the words. I crouched down so we were eye level. "Jaden," I said quietly, and he looked up. "Yeah." I smiled. "That test we did? It says I'm your dad." He stared at me. No immediate grin. No outburst. Just those wide brown eyes looking right into me. Then, after a long beat, he asked, "Does that mean I can stay with you forever?" I nodded, eyes burning. "Yeah, that's exactly what it means." He didn't say anything else. Just leaned forward and wrapped his arms around my neck with a kind of certainty that made my knees go weak. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But in that tiny gesture, everything changed. I wasn't just a man chasing answers anymore. I was his father, and there was no turning back. I didn't know how to be a father. Hell, I barely knew how to be an adult most days. My apartment wasn't built for children. It had sharp corners, cables tangled behind every piece of furniture, and a fridge that contained more beer than groceries. The walls were blank. The guest room was used for storage, and the only kid-friendly thing in my house was a dusty copy of the Lion King DVD that came free with my old TV. But the moment Jaden looked up at me and said, "Do I get to stay with you now?" I knew I couldn't send him anywhere else. The hospital discharged him the day after the DNA results came in. I signed the papers with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, not because I wasn't sure about taking him, but because I was scared of not being enough. What if I failed him like everyone else already had? We drove home in silence, Jaden in the back seat of a borrowed car seat, his lion plush clutched to his chest. Every red light, every quiet moment, I glanced at him in the mirror. He didn't say much, just looked out the window, face unreadable. When we pulled into the parking lot of my apartment, he squinted at the building and asked, "Is this a hotel?" "Nope," I smiled. "It's our place." He followed me upstairs slowly, his tiny backpack bouncing against his shoulders. When I opened the door, I suddenly saw the apartment through his eyes. How empty it was, how cold. No pictures on the wall. No color. No softness. He walked in and stood still, his eyes darting from corner to corner. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door and knelt beside him. "It's not perfect yet," I said honestly, "but we can make it ours. Together." That night, I gave him the guest room. After clearing out 2 suitcases, a box of tangled cords, and a set of dumbbells I hadn't used in a year. I laid down new sheets, found an old lamp in storage, and plugged in a nightlight I bought on the way home. I didn't have much, but I had a start. The first few days were awkward. Jaden was polite to the point of heartbreaking. He said thank you for everything, water, snacks, even when I handed him a clean towel. He never asked for seconds, never complained. At night, I'd hear him stir in his sleep, sometimes mumbling Selena's name or crying so softly it broke me in two. I started keeping his door cracked and mine open, just in case he needed to know someone was close. But little by little, something shifted. I made him pancakes one morning, burned them, of course, and tried to salvage them with smiley faces drawn in syrup. When I set the plate in front of him, expecting a quiet thank you like always, he stared down at the weirdly shaped blobs and burst out laughing. "You made a monster," he squealed. I blinked. "Excuse me." He pointed at the pancake face, one eye bigger than the other, mouth dripping with syrup. "That's not a smiley. That's a pancake monster." He laughed so hard he nearly fell off the chair, and I couldn't help it. I laughed too. That was the first time I heard his real laugh. Not polite, not quiet, loud, unapologetic, and wild. I'd never heard anything so good. After that, it became a game. Pancake monsters, toast ghosts, spaghetti snakes. Every meal was a challenge to create the most ridiculous-looking food, and every giggle from Jaden felt like a small piece of his walls falling down. We made a habit of story time at night. He liked to sit on my lap while I read, especially books with animals or silly voices. One night, after a particularly animated reading of the Gruffalo, he looked up and asked, "Were you always this fun?" I blinked. I don't know. Maybe I just needed the right audience. He smiled, leaned his head against my chest, and whispered, "I'm glad you're my dad." I didn't cry, but I wanted to. Not out of sadness, out of gratitude. Because those 5 words felt heavier than any DNA test, any paperwork. They were a promise, and they came from him. Willingly. Freely. Still, there were shadows. Jaden never mentioned Selena. Not once. Not when we passed women in the park. Not when I asked if he wanted to call Grandma Marissa. He shut down whenever the subject came close, his smile disappearing like someone flipped a switch. I didn't push. I just made sure he knew he was safe, that I was staying. I took a few weeks off work, burned through every vacation day I had, just to be home with him. We spent mornings building pillow forts, afternoons drawing dinosaurs on printer paper, and evenings chasing bubbles in the tiny patch of grass outside the building. I watched him go from wary to curious, quiet to playful. One evening, he stood on the couch with a blanket tied around his neck, arms stretched out like wings. "I'm Jaden the Brave," he shouted. "Yes, you are," I said from the kitchen, smiling so hard it hurt. Jaden the Brave, ruler of Couch Kingdom. He laughed, leapt into the cushions, and for the first time since I'd met him, I saw no fear in his eyes. No hesitation. Just joy. He still had nightmares. He still jumped at car alarms and flinched when someone raised their voice on TV. But he was healing. And so was I. For the first time in years, my apartment didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like home. It was a quiet Saturday morning. Cartoons playing softly on the TV, Jaden on the floor with his dinosaur figurines, the scent of scrambled eggs still lingering in the air. I was finally starting to feel like we had a rhythm. Nothing perfect, but ours. I'd just poured my first cup of coffee when a knock shattered the calm. Not the soft, neighborly kind. This one was sharp. Intentional. Demanding. I opened the door, and the last person I expected to see was standing there. Selena. Hair pulled into a frizzy bun, her clothes clinging to her like they hadn't been washed in weeks. Her eyes were sunken, skin pale, lips cracked. She looked like a ghost of herself, if the ghost hadn't slept in days and carried a storm in her chest. My grip on the door tightened. "What are you doing here?" Her eyes flicked past me into the apartment. "He's here, isn't he?" I stepped in her line of sight. "What do you want?" She raised her chin, defiant despite the tremble in her stance. "He's mine. I made a mistake, Leo. A terrible one. But I'm his mother, and I want him back." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the nerve of her felt like a punch to the ribs. "You left him in a hot car, Selena. No water. No goodbye. Not even a damn note. You don't get to show up like it was a bad dream you're ready to wake up from." I was desperate, she snapped. I had nowhere to go. No one was helping me. "And your solution was to dump your child and disappear?" I stepped out into the hall, shutting the door behind me so Jaden wouldn't hear. "You didn't even check if I was home. You parked 4 blocks away. I thought you'd find him." Her voice broke, and for a moment, The defiance faltered. I panicked. He cried all night. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't call. You didn't even try to reach me. You didn't just panic. You gave up. I crossed my arms. And now that I've done the hard part, now that he's safe and laughing again, you suddenly care? She met my eyes, but there was something hollow in hers. I need him back. I tilted my head. Why? Because you miss him, or because you lost whatever support system you were leeching off of? Silence. Then she muttered, they told me I could lose my benefits if I don't have custody. I didn't know it would come to this. And there it was. The truth she thought I wouldn't see. It wasn't love. It wasn't maternal instinct. It was money. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out a folded envelope. Her eyes followed it like a wolf spotting meat. I filed for custody the day I got the DNA results, I said, handing it to her. Emergency order. Court date's already set. She snatched the papers and scanned them, her face draining of color. You can't do this. I already did. Her hands shook. He's my son, Leo. And he's our son. But you gave up your say the day you left him for strangers to find. He was dehydrated, bruised, terrified. And he still hasn't said your name once. Her lip trembled. You think you're a better parent because you showed up for a week? No. I think I'm a better parent because I didn't walk away. The words hung between us like barbed wire. She reached out, trying to touch my arm. I stepped back. Don't, I said. You don't get to rewrite history now. I'll fight you in court. Go ahead. But bring more than excuses and tears. She turned to leave, then paused. Tell him I said hi. I didn't respond. I just watched her go, barefoot in flip-flops, limping slightly, shoulders hunched like the weight of her choices was finally catching up to her. And for the first time since Jaden entered my life, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity. Because whatever part of her once loved that boy, it had been buried under years of selfishness and regret. I went back inside. Jaden looked up from the couch. Who was it? I knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. Nobody important, buddy. He nodded like he already knew. Can we finish our dinosaur story? I smiled. Absolutely. We picked up where we left off, two raptors cornered by a T-Rex, with Jaden narrating in a deep, dramatic voice. And as he laughed and roared and waved his arms in excitement, I realized something else. He was choosing joy over memory. He was choosing now over then. Selena could scream about her rights. She could weep in front of a judge. But Jaden had already chosen who felt like home. And it wasn't her. The courthouse smelled like dust and nerves. The kind of place where people's lives got divided by paper and gavel strikes. I sat at the front bench beside Victor, my lawyer, watching as Selena took the stand like a character in a story she hadn't rehearsed enough. She wore a pale blue blouse, ironed but ill-fitting, and too much makeup that couldn't hide the bags under her eyes. Her hands trembled as she reached for the glass of water beside her, trying to maintain the illusion that she had it together. Victor leaned toward me and whispered, "Let her talk. The more she explains, the deeper she'll dig." I nodded, my eyes not leaving her. I didn't feel angry anymore. That had burned out. What I felt now was something colder, resolve. The judge, a woman with steel-gray hair and a voice that cut through noise like a razor, looked over her glasses. "Miss Carter, please tell the court why you left your son unattended in a car registered to your ex-husband, without informing anyone of his whereabouts." Selena's voice wavered. "I was under immense stress. I lost my job, my partner left me, and I didn't have any income. I thought Leo would find Jaden. I parked near his address. I thought it was safer than a shelter." Victor didn't interrupt. He sat calmly, flipping through the file in front of him. The judge continued, her expression unreadable. "Were you aware that your son was found in a vehicle on a 90-degree day, with no food or water, and that the car was locked?" "I didn't mean to hurt him," she said quickly. I didn't know what else to do." That was her defense. A shrug of desperation. When it was our turn, Victor rose like he'd been waiting for this moment all week. He approached the bench with quiet control and opened our folder. "Your Honor, we're not here to punish Miss Carter for being poor or struggling. We are here because of her choices. Choices that endangered a 4-year-old boy's life. This isn't about a single mistake. This is about a pattern of avoidance, neglect, and abandonment." He handed over the documents one by one. "We have the police report. The hospital intake form listing mild dehydration and bruising. Surveillance footage showing no one returned to the vehicle for over 3 hours. We also have medical records indicating this child has not seen a pediatrician regularly since birth." Selena squirmed in her seat. Victor turned toward the gallery, where I sat with Jaden on my lap. And finally, Your Honor, we have the child's own behavior. Jaden has been in Mr. Carter's care since the incident. He sleeps through the night, attends pre-K without issue, and has formed a secure bond with his father. He does not ask for Miss Carter. He shows signs of emotional trauma, yes, but also signs of healing. The judge paused, staring at us both. Then she looked at Selena. Do you have anything else to say before I make my decision? Selena stood, tears forming. He's my baby, she whispered. He's the only good thing I ever had. I know I messed up, but I want another chance. The judge let the silence hang. Then she adjusted her glasses, cleared her throat, and spoke. Miss Carter, your struggle is evident, but it does not excuse the reckless endangerment of a child. Mr. Carter has taken responsibility where you have not. He has provided stability, care, and a safe environment. Therefore, I am granting full legal and physical custody to Mr. Leo Carter. You will have no visitation rights until such time as this court sees sufficient improvement in your circumstances and a clear plan for supervised contact. Selena gasped. No, please, no. But the judge had already turned to the next item on the docket. Selena stood frozen, her mouth moving but no sound coming out. She looked at me, desperate, defeated, and for the first time, I didn't look away. I didn't need to. She whispered, You ruined my life. I stood slowly, Jaden resting his head on my shoulder. You walked away from it, I said quietly. I just picked up what you left behind. She slumped into her chair as I carried Jaden out of the courtroom. The air outside felt fresher than it had in weeks, like a storm had passed and the wreckage was behind us. In the parking lot, Jaden stirred and looked up. Did we win? I smiled and kissed the top of his head. Yeah, buddy. We did. We drove home in silence, but it wasn't the awkward kind anymore. It was the kind of quiet that follows clarity. Jaden fell asleep in his car seat halfway home, his lion plush tucked under his arm. And as I glanced at him in the rearview mirror, I knew something deep in my bones. We weren't surviving anymore. We were beginning. No one prepares you for the quiet moments of fatherhood. The ones that come when the chaos dies down, not the courtroom battles or emergency hospital visits, but the simple mornings when a small voice calls out, Dad, and you realize it's you they're calling for. Not because someone told them to, but because they mean it. The first time Jaden called me Dad, it was a Wednesday evening. He was standing in front of the bathroom mirror, brushing his teeth with a blue toothbrush I'd let him pick out at the store. I was in the hallway, folding towels, listening to him hum the alphabet song between brushes when he said it. Dad, can I have the bubble toothpaste tomorrow? This one's spicy. I froze. It wasn't a big moment. Not dramatic. No music swelled in the background. But it was seismic. That one word, 3 letters, anchored itself into my chest like it had always belonged there. Dad. I stepped into the bathroom, leaned against the door frame, and nodded. Yeah, we'll grab the bubblegum one tomorrow. He grinned, foam on his chin, eyes bright. And just like that, something invisible stitched tighter between us. Becoming a father wasn't a singular event. It wasn't the DNA test. It wasn't the court ruling. It was that slow, unfolding process of being needed, of being chosen over and over again in the small, ordinary ways. Like when Jaden reached for my hand in a crowd, or when he ran to the door when I came home from a quick errand, or when he whispered, Don't leave, during a thunderstorm and I stayed, without needing to be asked twice. But it wasn't easy. There were nightmares, screaming fits in the middle of the night that left us both shaken. There were days at school where he'd freeze during roll call if someone mentioned the word mom, mornings when he didn't want to eat, and nights when he clung to me like I might disappear. Trauma doesn't pack its bags and leave because the court said so. It lingers. It seeps. It tests. I got him a therapist, a kind woman named Deja who knew exactly how to sit on the floor with a child and get him to draw his feelings in crayon. Sometimes I'd hear them through the door. That's my dad, he said once, pointing to a stick figure with a crooked smile. He makes pancakes look like animals. Other times, the drawings were darker. Crayon cars with kids alone inside. Big red circles for heat. Tears drawn with such precision, it made my heart ache. We worked through it. Together. I rearranged my life for him. Cut back on hours at work. Set a bedtime routine. Built structure where there had been none. Saturday mornings became our sacred time. Pancakes, cartoons, grocery store adventures. I taught him how to tie his shoelaces. He taught me that no amount of planning could prepare me for glitter glue in the carpet. I watched him blossom. His laughter returned, loud, wild, contagious. He started bringing home drawings from school that weren't just colors scribbled in fury, but pictures of dinosaurs, houses, and two people holding hands. "That's you and me," he said once. "You're tall. I'm fast." He asked about his mom once. Just once. We were sitting on the couch, watching a nature show about baby animals finding their way home. He turned to me, his voice small. "Do you think Mommy misses me?" I didn't flinch. I didn't lie. I just took a deep breath and answered as gently as I could. "I think she's going through something hard. And maybe she does. But right now, she's not ready to take care of anyone. And that's not your fault." He nodded like he understood more than a 5-year-old should have to. "I'm glad you're here." "Me too, kiddo," I whispered, pulling him close. That night, after he fell asleep, I stood in his doorway and watched him breathe. The shadows of dinosaurs danced on his walls from the projector nightlight we picked out together. He was tucked under his favorite blanket, blue with little rockets on it, and he looked peaceful. I remembered a time not long ago when that same boy wouldn't even sleep through the night. When he'd wake up crying, unsure of where he was, who he was with, or if he was safe. Now he called me Dad. He laughed in his sleep. He was healing. And so was I. I thought I had lost everything the day Selena walked out. I thought the silence that followed was the end of my story. But it turns out, the silence was just the beginning of a new one. A better one. Becoming a father wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up. Every day, even when you're exhausted, even when you're scared, even when you're not sure you're enough. Jaden didn't need perfect. He just needed me. And I would never stop being exactly that. 5 years have passed. Jaden's 9 now, taller, sharper, full of questions that tumble out of him before he can even blink. He's got this habit of furrowing his brows when he's thinking, just like I do. He lines up his cereal box perfectly with the edge of the table. He asks why the sun sets, why some birds fly in a V, and why some people leave even when they say they love you. He's not afraid of the answers. He wants the truth. He's always wanted the truth. Last week, he told me he wanted to be a firefighter. We were at the kitchen table, working on a school project about community helpers. I just asked him who he admired most, expecting him to say his favorite teacher or a cartoon hero. Instead, he looked up and said, "I want to save people. The way you saved me." I don't think I said anything for a full minute. My throat closed up so fast I had to excuse myself and pretend I spilled something just to blink back the tears. I stood at the sink and watched the faucet run, pretending it was louder than it was, just so he couldn't hear the sound of my heart breaking open again in the best possible way. He doesn't remember much from that day in the car. Sometimes I catch him trying to. He'll zone out during car rides or fall silent when we pass the street where he was found. But he doesn't ask about Selena anymore. It's as if his soul instinctively filed her away somewhere quiet, where she couldn't hurt him anymore. We moved into a new house 2 years ago. It has a small backyard and a dog named Bucket, Jaden's choice. Bucket is part Labrador, part escape artist, and all heart. Jaden reads to him every night before bed. It started when his teacher gave him a reading assignment, and he decided Bucket made the perfect audience. Now it's a ritual. Some nights I watch from the hallway, listening to his voice trail through the cracks of his door, and I think, this is what peace sounds like. Selena hasn't tried to contact us since the court ruling. I heard she moved out of state, maybe working part-time somewhere, maybe still chasing stability. I don't know. I don't check. I made a promise to myself a long time ago. I would never let my curiosity outrun my responsibility. Jaden's life is built on consistency, trust, and showing up. And that means leaving the past where it belongs. But that doesn't mean I forget. When I tuck Jaden in at night, I still remember the first time I saw him asleep in that hospital bed. Fragile, bruised, alone. I remember every inch of that moment, the beeping machines, the sterile scent, the tiny lion plush in his arms. And I remember the vow I made in silence that night, to never leave. To never let him feel discarded again. I've kept that vow every day since. Fatherhood has taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a series of small, sacred actions. It's packing lunch with the crust cut off because he says the edges taste like cardboard. It's signing up for parent-teacher conferences even when work is insane. It's kneeling on the floor with him when he's overwhelmed, breathing with him until the storm in his chest quiets. It's learning the difference between giving space and giving up. Jaden's room is a museum of growth. Crayon art from kindergarten lines the wall next to Lego sets and fire truck posters. He wants to paint it red now. Real fireman red, he says. We'll do it this weekend, even if it gets messy. Especially if it gets messy. He's not just growing into a good boy, he's becoming a kind one. Last month, he stood up for a classmate who was being teased about her clothes. Told the other kids, "You don't know what people go through at home." His teacher called me to say how proud I should be. I already was. And sometimes, when he doesn't know I'm watching, I see him do things that make my heart ache in the best way, holding the door for strangers, tying a friend's shoelace, petting Bucket like he's the most precious creature on earth. These aren't things I taught him directly. These are things he absorbed. Because kids don't become who we tell them to be. They become who we are. So I keep trying. I still burn pancakes sometimes. Still get frustrated when the day runs long and the house is a mess. But every night, before I turn off the lights and kiss him on the forehead, I say the same 3 words. I'm right here. And every night, he says it back. 5 years ago, I didn't know I had a son. Now, I can't imagine my life without him. He is not a burden. He is not a mistake. He is not a story I stumbled into. He is the best chapter one never planned. And when he becomes a man, when he finally wears that firefighter's uniform or decides to become something else entirely, I hope he remembers not just the words I said, but the way I stood beside him through every storm. Because sometimes the sirens at your door aren't warnings of disaster. Sometimes they're the sound of fate finally finding you.